sunflowers open their eyes, so beautiful and bright. And I find true beauty in the morning time when the sunflowers in your eyes are open wide. Open up your eyes wide. Open your eyes. This life is a beautiful thing when the summer heat is softened by a breeze, by a breeze. And I know it's a beautiful thing when the orange leaves of the autumn take a leap down from the trees. And I find true beauty when the sky turns yellow and the sunflowers open their eyes, so beautiful and bright. And I find true beauty in the morning time when the sunflowers in your eyes are open wide. Open up your eyes wide. Open up your eyes so true beauty when the sky turns yellow and the sunflowers open their eyes, so beautiful and bright. And I find true beauty in the morning time when the sunflowers in your eyes are open wide. Open up your eyes wide. Open up your eyes so wide.
And it's been a while since we danced real slow, and it's much too early for me to go. 'Cause you got my head spinning round. Lord, don't let me calm down. I shudder at the thought of being without you, losing all your honesty. the ways of your truth. You are giving life. My God, you're a father to me. Let love and faithfulness never leave me. Let your wisdom always guide me. For I will not fear this life. For you are with me all the time. You will be my source of confidence. You will be my source of nourishment. By the ways of your truth, you are giving life. Oh my God, you're a father.
Lord, let me know that the sea that you put in front of me will part, and you'll be there. Lord, let me know that the sea that you put in front of me will part, and you'll be there.
You will be my source of confidence. You will be my source of nourishment. By the ways of your truth, you are giving life. My God, you're a father to
that the only one that matters is you. Jesus, please be pleased with me as I repent, I turn. Jesus, watch me joyfully as I live and learn. How many voices will I listen to till I remember that the only one that matters is you?
Wake up the innocent, sweet tasting candy for the kids. Hide it from each other, don't let them see the sugar dripping from your lips. Keep it secret, a bad dream shining from your memories. Shining from your memories. I'm not trying to get caught red-handed. I'm
Good morning. We're going to worship the Lord this morning. Sing, open the eyes of my heart. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, 'cause I want to see you. 'Cause I want to see you. Sing that again, open the eyes. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, 'cause I want to see you. 'Cause I want to see you, to see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory, and pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, 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 holy. You are holy, holy, holy. Yes, Lord, you're holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Sing, open the eyes, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Oh, open the eyes of my heart, 'cause I want to see you. 'Cause I want to see you. Sing, open the eyes, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Oh, open the eyes of my heart, 'cause I want to see you. 'Cause I want to see you. To see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. and pour out your power and love as we sing holy, 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 to see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory, yeah. Pour out your power and love as we sing holy, 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 and holy, holy, holy. You are holy, holy, holy. Oh yes, Lord, you're holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Sing, open the eyes, Lord, open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, 'cause I want to see you. 'Cause I want to see you. Sing, open the eyes, Lord, and open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Oh, open the eyes of my heart, 'cause I want to see you. 'Cause I want to see you.
Well, good morning, Action Church. Happy Easter to all of you. And I'll just say it up front, I wish you were here. And I'm so glad that so many of us are healthy and well. And, I'm just grateful that we've really been so fortunate as a people. But I'll tell you, I miss having you here. And the reason why is because to Action Church, we think Easter is an even better celebration than Christmas. We're excited about Christmas. We do silly things on Christmas. We go a little nutty at Christmas because it's great news that Jesus is born. But I've always thought that somehow it was even better news that Jesus is alive, still alive, that he rose again. And so I was thinking back, I was like, one thing that makes it so strange not having you here this morning is Easter has always just been a time where we sort of turned up the volume on celebration. And I was thinking about Action Church actually sort of began out of an Easter service. We started in February of 2008, right in the recession. Fantastic timing as always. And we made it to Easter. And what people didn't know about Easter, thinking back, and I've told this story before, but it just reminds me so much this morning of how on that Easter morning, we were basically out of money and about ready to finish the church, which had been a good run of a couple months. And we had received a large check, for us a large check, a few weeks before or the week before. And it was interesting because it was enough to cover an entire month's rent at Fat Daddy's nightclub where we rented. And it was the biggest check we'd ever received. And for some crazy reason, both my wife Michelle and I felt like it would be good to just give it away. And so that first Easter service that we thought was our last Easter service, you see the picture of someone handing out Easter eggs. Those Easter eggs actually had actual cash in them. And there were 5s and 10s and 20s, and we had 4 little rules. I remember those 4 little rules was don't put it in the donation box and don't sell it, don't spend it yourself, and use it for a simple act of kindness, and then just share your story. And looking back, that's really what started this church that we're part of today. And it's been 12 years, but it was at Easter Sunday where we were so certain that celebrating the fact that Jesus was alive was sort of the biggest celebration of the year. And it's always been like that. We've had Easter eggs falling from the ceiling in the kids' room, giant baskets. I can't tell you how many times our house has just been filled with baskets for the children. And, Fitzky Candy so many times has joined us, and it's a time of chocolate, and house band is played. It's funny because Mike just played for us, which I'm really excited to have Mike. We needed music, and I'm glad to have Mike playing this morning. I think Joel Osteen has Kanye this morning, but I'm pretty happy that we have Mike. So, but Easter has always just been this big sort of over the top celebration, and now we're all at home. And so I've been sort of thinking, like, how do we celebrate a stay-at-home Easter? Well, here's what I do know. we'll sort of postpone the celebration part. I can't wait to see you again. And if you notice, we moved in the same room. We're still a portable church. We just actually moved up on the stage this week. It worked better. But I can't wait to see this room filled with you again and maybe have a breakfast. And so we'll celebrate when we can all come back together. But here's the thing that I think will help us remember this Easter. Why this Easter can be a special Easter, even though there are no eggs falling from the ceiling and we're not eating chocolate and we're not all together and it's not this big sort of silly over-the-top celebration, the fact that Jesus is alive. I think the reason why we can really look back on this Easter in years to come is because maybe it'll help us understand Easter in a different way. Because the story of Easter starts on a day called Preparation Day. And I didn't know that. I've read the story a million times, and for some reason I overlooked that. But we understand this idea of a Preparation Day. We didn't before this whole thing started, before stay-at-home orders and quarantines and lockdowns. Like, it's so funny. If there's anything that comes out of this, I know that our society has changed. We probably won't hug as much. I don't know. Or it might go the other way. I still think maybe we'll just lick each other on the side of the face like puppies. We'll be so excited. Probably not. But here's the thing. Like, I know our society is going to change. And one thing that's going to change is somehow, I think prepping is going to get really sexy. Like, you're going to kind of check out, like, who has a good supply of toilet paper at their house, you know? And we never thought about that. We were all on, like, the, buy it now, or, hey, delivery's in 2 days on Amazon. And so we sign up and save. But I think in the future, just because we've experienced a tiny little bit of lack and a tiny little bit of, even if you have the money, maybe you go to the store and they don't have it, that we'll probably look at prepping and preparing a little different. And that's the story where we pick up the Easter story, because everyone was sort of inside their homes, and I'll tell you why in a moment. And this is a story of a lockdown, really, of a stay-at-home order, and we picked that story up in John 19, in verse 28. It'll be up on the screen, or you could look it up on your phone right now or on your Bible. I said look it up on your Bible. In your Bible, actually. Weird. Open them up. There are pages there. You've got one. It's in the bookcase. John 19 says this. It says, Jesus knew that his mission was now finished. And to fulfill Scripture, he said, I am thirsty. A jar of sour wine was sitting there, so they soaked a sponge in it. And they put it on a hyssop branch, and they held it to his lips. And when Jesus had tasted it, he said, it is finished. Here he is on the cross. He takes a drink of the sour wine, and he gives up his spirit. It says, then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. And here's a line that, like I said, I never really noticed, but maybe I did because now we understand it a little better. It says, it was the day of preparation, and the Jewish leaders didn't want the bodies hanging there the next day, which was the Sabbath, and a very special Sabbath because it was Passover week. So they asked Pilate to hasten their deaths. They're preparing. Pretty sick, but they are preparing for the next day. To hasten their deaths, the men on the cross, there's Jesus flanked by two thieves. To hasten their deaths by ordering their legs be broken. And this is so brutal, and I'm sorry to have to say it, but this is the truth of crucifixion. Like, we think of crucifixion as a shiny cross or maybe a picture that we've seen, or maybe we watch the Passion of the Christ. But these people had walked past crucifixions. They had smelled crucifixions. They'd heard the groans of crucifixion. And they would actually mostly die of suffocation. You don't really die from spikes being driven through your arms, even though maybe you wish you would because of the pain. But you die from suffocation because after a while your legs give out and your arms give out. And you can no longer hold yourself up to breathe. And so cruelly they broke their legs. So that they wouldn't be able to support themselves on their legs, and so they would die quicker. It says, but when they came to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead. Now, this is super important because it just said Jesus gave up his spirit. Jesus chose at that time, my work is done here, and he actually gave up his spirit and died on his own. And they were actually surprised. It says, so they didn't break his legs. One of the soldiers, however, pierced his side with a spear, and immediately blood and water flowed out. Now, that's important as well for us today because we can know, and it's been a theory over the years like, oh, well, maybe Jesus just passed out. Well, if you look at the totality of crucifixion, you look at the totality of the punishment and the torture that he took, that's highly unlikely. And it's not like after that they took him down off the cross and they took him to an ICU and they pumped him full of chemicals and they brought him back. No, and they stuck him in a hole in the side of a mountain. But here we find that when they stabbed him with a spear, that blood and water came out, which is exactly what happens when you actually stab a dead cadaver. And I want to talk to you about the day of preparation. Because you and I, in 2020, we can actually relate to that. We wouldn't have known what this meant last year. It would have been sort of a story I would tell you, and maybe you would think, oh, well, I guess I can imagine that. But you and I fully understand what this was like, because this was the day before the Passover. This is the day, on Passover Day, on the Passover celebration, it was a stay-at-home order. There was no work. Some of you are blessed enough to be essential. I've been blessed enough to be able to work. Some, it's slow, but I'm working. Some of you are not working, and you know what I'm talking about when you have that feeling you want to go to work, you want to be able to support the family, you want to pay the bills, and you're not allowed. Well, that's what happened here. On Passover time, there was no work, there was no commerce, no one, at least we can go to Walmart if we're brave enough once a week, and we can buy something, but there was no buying, no selling, there was zero travel. You stayed in your home and you didn't travel, no entertainment at all. No yeast, no donuts, no bread, just unleavened bread, flatbreads, crackers. I guess pancakes were allowed, which that sounds nice. But basically, they were under a stay-at-home order on Passover. So preparation day was the day when they would prepare to stay inside for Passover, to celebrate Passover. And in the Jewish community, in the story of Jesus, this was not optional. If you didn't do the stay-at-home order on Passover, you would be kicked out of society. I mean, we can imagine that a little bit if we do something our neighbors don't like and they talk about us on Facebook. But this was even worse than that, believe it or not. They were actually out of society, if you talk about canceling, if they didn't follow the rules. So I want to read to you and remind you, because it's kind of interesting what this thing they were celebrating, what this stay-at-home order was all about. And so I'm going to read from Exodus, and you'll see it on the screen. And this is the story of the original Passover. And God is speaking through Moses to the people to tell them what to do. It says, the animals that you choose must be year-old males without defects. So this is planning before preparation day, they would pick out a perfect lamb. And you may take them from the sheep or the goats and take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the members of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and the tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat the lambs. That same night, they eat the meat roasted over the fire, along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. This is why they couldn't have yeast later. Do not eat the meat raw or boiled in water, which sounds yummy, but roasted over fire with the head and the legs and the internal organs. Nice recipe. Do not leave any of it till morning, for if some is left till morning, you must burn it. This is how you are to eat it, with your cloak tucked into your belt. Basically, keep your coat on is what God is saying. You should be ready to run out the door. We would say, don't have basketball shorts and flip-flops on. Be ready to, well, actually, that's where everyone goes everywhere now. But imagine you needed to go on a long walking journey. Have your hiking boots on. Backpack ready, basically. Your sandals on your feet and your staff in your hand. Eat in haste. It is the Lord's Passover, and on that same night I will pass through Egypt, and I will strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. This is a day you are to commemorate. For the generations to come, you shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance. See, this is the story of the emancipation of Israel leaving Egypt after 400 years of slavery. And there had been a whole list of plagues. There'd been, the worst of them, I think, is lice, other than the dead children. That's a terrible one. But the cattle had died. The rivers had turned to blood. There'd been frogs. The plague of frogs sounds fun. Not so much. But the worst part, I think, is there was a plague of lice where everyone got lice, and through it all, the Israelites didn't suffer from the same diseases and the same plagues as Egypt. And God was using this to convince Egypt to let them go. And finally, they came down to the last plague. And Pharaoh, it says Pharaoh's heart was hardened. And you know what he said to them? He said, okay, finally, you can go and you can go out of town and you can pray, but you're going to have to leave your animals here. And the reason why he said that is because all of their animals had died. So the fact that the slaves had animals made them probably the richest people in Egypt at that time, because they're the only people that have anything left. And God said, no, that's not going to happen. And Moses told them then, and God tells them to prepare. So the day of preparation is the day that you would slaughter the lamb, because it couldn't be done during Passover. And then that night you would eat the lamb, and you would eat it with your coat on, sort of, it says, like ready to go. Now in the original Passover, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened, because they put the blood over their door from the lamb. They killed the lamb, put the blood over the door, and then that is the sign to the plague that it wouldn't enter their home. And so they had to trust somehow that if we do this, we've called this series Believe, and we're talking about what you believe. The people who believed this unbelievable story, this impossible thing that God said, this improbable, nonsensical thing that if you put blood over your doorway, your children won't die and your animals won't die and everyone else's will. Well, that's exactly what happened. And because of that, it changed everything. All of a sudden, Pharaoh and all of the Egyptians went from going, you can't leave, or you could leave, but leave your belongings behind. Instead, they're like, just get out of here. And so that's how God freed his people. And if you think about it, in the story of the Passover that they were going to celebrate the night Jesus was died, on preparation day, they killed the lamb so that the firstborn of the family could live. Their first son, their first daughter. And you think about it, like, you wouldn't pick any child of yours for anything worse than the other. But that also meant their only child would die if they didn't have the blood over their door. So on that day, they killed the lamb and the firstborn lived. But the story of Jesus is that the firstborn died. Jesus, the firstborn Son of God, died so that everyone could live. And you might go, well, where'd you come up with that idea that everyone would live if Jesus died? Well, that's what the priest said. You know, we get sort of confused sometimes about why in the world would they kill this guy who's just doing miracles? He's feeding people. He's caring for people. He's healing the sick. Why in the world would they kill someone? Well, I'm not going to speculate. I just want to read what the priest said. The high priest Caiaphas, who actually put Jesus up to be executed. This is an earlier time they thought about executing Jesus, and we have the transcript basically from John. It says, then the leading priests and the Pharisees called the high council together. What are we going to do? They ask each other. And notice this. It says, this man, Jesus, excuse me, certainly performs many miraculous signs. If we allow him to go on like this, soon everyone will believe in him. Then the Roman army will come and destroy both our temple and our nation. And Caiaphas, who was high priest at the time, said, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't realize. Listen to what Caiaphas said. He said, a good reason to kill Jesus is because it's better for you that one man should die for the people than the whole nation be destroyed. See, Caiaphas had a plan. He's like, if we could get rid of Jesus, these people are following Jesus. These people think he's something that he's not. He's not the Christ. He's not the Messiah. He's just this troublemaker. And sure, he performs miracles, but we think that's probably a trick. So we need to kill Jesus so the Romans don't come and kill us all. take away our power, send us off. I mean, they're known to do that. The Romans had a heavy hand. And man, if you did not uprise against the Romans, and Caiaphas knew that. And he's like, if we don't get rid of Jesus, we're all doomed. And so if we can kill Jesus, it's better that one man die than the whole nation be destroyed. So it's sort of a good ending for the story, isn't it? If you think about it, like that would be really a super coincidence. It would be a super sort of like, wow, I didn't know that in history moment. Like this idea that on the day of preparation, when everyone's preparing their lambs, that Jesus, who called himself the Lamb of God, would be killed. And then think what happened next. And we can actually relate to this, people, because we're going through what we're going through right now. They weren't out huddled, they weren't out protesting in the streets. They weren't out even getting the news at the local pub, and they certainly didn't have Twitter or Facebook or cable news or all the ways that we're still connected, or your newspaper online, or all the ways that we're still connected through the social media. They were huddled in their houses under a stay-at-home order, wondering what was going to happen next. Wondering what was going to happen next, because you think about like the disciples are huddled together on that Passover. They're huddled together wondering if the priests are going to come after them next. And the priests are probably huddled in their home during that Passover season, wondering if the people are going to revolt after this because they killed Jesus. And it's sort of a good place to end the story if you think about it, because one man did die, as predicted by the priests, as predicted by Jesus himself, so that the Romans wouldn't destroy the story. But here's why Easter's such a big deal, is because for all the symbolism of that, for all of the things that, wow, God is in control and God can do what he wants, and if we show faith in God and we put the blood over our door, or we claim the blood of Jesus, we'll be protected. But if the story ended there, that would just be for them. That maybe for a short time at least, Rome didn't destroy Israel, but that's not where it ended. Luke tells it this way. It says, but very early on Sunday morning. Why Sunday morning? Because now the Sabbath is over. The Passover Sabbath is over. They can leave their homes. They're not on stay-at-home order. Kind of like at some point when we can leave our homes, we are going to rush out. And that's the same way that they did. It says, but very early on Sunday morning, the women went to the tomb. They haven't been able to go to the tomb because they're under the lockdown for Passover. So they went to the tomb, taking the spices they had prepared. And they found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. So they went in, and they didn't find the body of the Lord Jesus. And as he stood there puzzled, two men suddenly appeared to him, clothed in dazzling robes. And the women were terrified, and they bowed with their faces to the ground. Then the men asked, why are you looking among the dead for someone who is alive? He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Remember what he told you back in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be betrayed into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and that he would rise again on the third day. Then they remembered what he had said, that he had said this. These ladies here are actually the first true believers. They remembered, oh, this is what Jesus was talking about. So they rushed back from the tomb to tell his 11 disciples. And everyone else, there's 11 disciples, because Judas has checked out by then. Judas hanged himself, who betrayed Jesus. What had happened? And it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and several other women who told the apostles what had happened. But the story sounded like nonsense to the men, so they didn't believe it. And that's what we get for not believing our women. But they were telling an unbelievable story. And we've been talking, started last week, and we'll be talking all month about Thomas, doubting Thomas the doubter, and how he couldn't believe that Jesus was actually alive. But the interesting thing we know from this is none of the men could believe that Jesus was alive, because it was unbelievable. It truly is unbelievable that we saw him die and now he's alive. And we all know that's impossible. All the years since the beginning, you know, so as long as written history has existed, people have died and no one comes back. And I like that the men actually use my favorite timey prospector word. They said, that's nonsense. It's like, that's not the way things work. You ladies have it wrong. So when we come across our friend Thomas, it's funny in light of that, how much that changes our understanding of Thomas. Because I've always thought of Thomas as kind of like, oh, he's the doubty guy. He's the one. He's the guy. He's the one who wouldn't get with the program. And it's true. Thomas said, I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands and put my fingers into them and place my hand into the wound in the side. But truthfully, Thomas didn't believe, and none of them believed. Nobody, Andy Stanley always says that nobody was waiting outside the tomb, counting it down, 10, 9, 8. That's not the way it happened. Instead, they came and found an empty tomb. And then the ladies ran back and said, you can't believe this. He's gone. And we talked to some, I guess, angels, some men there said that he's risen, that he's alive. And then we know again and again that Jesus appeared, not just to one guy, not just to one lady, but to many, many, many people over a good long time. And in fact, we find 8 days later, the disciples were together again. And this time Thomas was with them, and the doors were locked. Then suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. Peace be with you, he said. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here and look at my hands. Put your hand into my wound and in my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe. My Lord and my God, Thomas exclaimed. Then Jesus told him, and this is a message to us. This is a message to you and I. You believe, Thomas, because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me. And I hope that's you. And I know that's me this morning. Not because I've seen, but I've become convinced that Jesus is alive. That the story is part of a much, much larger plan. Because see, what happened on that day is that Jesus believed something. We often talk about what the disciples believed. But Jesus believed that not only would he dying as the firstborn save everyone, he'd been telling people that he was coming back. He believed that God in his mercy would save him as well, that he would not be truly dead forever. And it's so interesting to think about because in the story of the Passover, they had to believe something. They had to believe something without seeing. The people who put blood above their doors, who killed the lamb on preparation day and then spent the day inside and put the blood above their doors, those people, their children lived. And the people that didn't believe that sort of impossible, unbelievable thing, sadly, it says they woke up the next morning and there was just terror and crying all over the land of Egypt. But the people who believed were blessed. And that's where we are this morning. I'm going to have Mike come back and play another song. But it's interesting that this all happened on Passover. This whole happened, and it basically reenacted this idea of Passover, that Jesus was the lamb. And he sacrificed himself for you and I. And if we believe, it's not just that we would be, it would be great for them if they were saved from the Romans. That would have lasted a temporary time, but that's not what happened. When he came back, he said that none of us had to worry about death at all, ever again, that in him, we could live for eternity. That as bad as it gets, there's nothing on this planet that could take away the fact that we could live for eternity with him. So Mike's going to play a song, and then I want to remind you what Jesus believed, because you know what? On the very last night, before this all happened, his last night with his disciples before he was betrayed, you know what Jesus chose to do? He chose to remember Passover. He chose to remember this previous thing God had done and that he was depending on, I'm certain of it, he was depending on this thing he knew about God, about Passover. And he wanted to remind us of that. And so Mike's going to sing a song, and then we're going to do that together. So gather your communion supplies, and we're going to read what Jesus said, and then we're going to do what he asked us to do. And even though this is not the Easter any of us would pick, even though this is not the kind of Easter that we could imagine, this is not what we would choose, here in your homes this morning, it could be a very powerful Easter if we could understand the story in a different way and just simply do what Jesus said and not be faithless anymore, but without seeing, believe. Believe that his blood, like the lamb's blood so many thousand years before, could save us. Not just from one night, not just from a disease or a virus, not just from a plague, but for eternity.
Hungry, I come to you, for I know you satisfy. And I am empty, but I know your love does not run dry. So I wait for you. So I wait for you. Sing that again. Hungry I come. Hungry I come to you, for I know you satisfy. And I am empty, but I know your love does not run dry. So I wait for you. So I wait for you. And I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. And Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. Broken I run. Broken I run to you, for your arms are open wide. And I am weary, but I know your touch restores my life. So I wait for you. So I wait for you. And I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. And Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. And I'm falling on my knees, and I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. And Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. Sing hungry. Hungry I come to you, for I know you satisfy. And I am empty, but I know your love does not run dry. So I wait for you. So I wait for you. And I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. And Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. I'm falling and I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. And Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. And I'm falling on my knees and offering all of me. And Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. Jesus, Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. And Jesus, you're all this heart is living for.
I keep thinking how Jesus used to say something that made no sense to anyone. He would say things like, "My time has not come." They would say, you should go to Jerusalem and preach. Or he'd say, "My time hasn't come." Or they would try to kill him, and he'd say, "No, you can't, because my time hasn't come." But what makes sense about that looking back is we realize, oh, he planned to sacrifice himself over Passover to remind us that this wasn't just him dying. He didn't get caught by the Romans. This was a choice. And that last night he spent with his best friends, they're so telling when we look back in that light. And I just want to read them to you from Luke. It said, when the time came, see, Jesus said, now is the time. Jesus and the apostles sat down at the table. And Jesus said, I've been very eager to eat this Passover meal with you before my suffering begins. For I tell you now that I won't eat this meal again until its meaning is fulfilled in the kingdom of God. Then he took a cup of wine, and he gave thanks to God for it. And he said, take this and share it among yourself. And out there, your wine or your grape juice or whatever you've gathered, let's do that, even at home. We have, it looks like a game piece and some purple liquid, but we're even doing it here. We've got the single serve, so we'll be safe. So then he took some bread, and he gave thanks to God for it. And he broke it into pieces, and he gave it to his disciples, saying, this is my body. See, they were used to eating the Passover lamb, and here they're eating the Passover lamb, and they're celebrating this thing that happened so many years before. And he wanted to remind them, like, that's what I am. I'm the lamb. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance for me. And after supper, he took another cup of wine. And he said, this cup is the new covenant between God and his people. Agreement confirmed with my blood, which is poured out as a sacrifice for you. So today, we'll do what he asks. In our homes, scattered all around this area, all over. We'll do what he asks. We'll remember him. And we'll drink a cup of grape juice or a glass of wine. And we'll say, this is the blood that Jesus poured out. And just like putting blood, it wasn't the blood that saved them. You know, it wasn't like blood has magical properties when you put it above your door. It was believing what God had said that saved them. And in the same way, this isn't magic grape juice or magic bread or magic crackers, or I don't even know what we're about to take here. Looks like some sort of plastic. But it's believing. It's believing that what Jesus said was true. And here's the great thing. He said, blessed are those who believe and don't see. Well, guess what? Sadly for the Egyptians, and so amazing for the Israelites in that original Passover, the next morning they got to see that what they believed was true, that their children were alive. And sadly, the people who didn't believe, theirs weren't. And that changed everything. They were freed. But guess what? We have a better story, because our story is that because Jesus came back, now we know all it takes is one person coming back and going, there's something real over there. This isn't the end. This isn't the end. No matter where you're at, no matter how bad it gets, no matter if you were to die today, this isn't the end. And it only takes one person to show us that that's true. And if we believe, even though we cannot see, we can wake up in that place someday. I want to pray with you, and Mike's going to play a little more, and I pray that you would join us in believing and drinking the cup and eating the bread. Dear Jesus, thank you for your sacrifice for us. Thank you for purposely shedding your life as the Passover lamb. Thank you for giving us the faith to believe. And God, we're scattered and we're stuck at home. Some of us are frightened. Some of us have been harmed already. Some of us are worried about what we're going to move back to, what we're going to see when we come out of our homes. And God, our faith has sort of been shaken in all this world offers because we realize nothing is nearly as firm and as trustworthy as we thought. But God, we need something firm to believe in. And we don't want to just be gullible and we don't want to be easily convinced. But God, we make a choice this morning to be firmly convinced that Jesus is alive, and that means that we someday will be alive with him. In your name we pray. Amen.
I'm forgiven because you were forsaken, and I'm accepted. You were condemned, and I'm alive and well. Your spirit is within me because you died and rose again. Sing that again. I'm forgiven. And I'm forgiven because you were forsaken, and I'm accepted. You were condemned, and I'm alive and well. Your spirit is within me because you died and rose again. Amazing love, amazing love. How can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Yeah, yeah. Amazing love, and I know it's true. It's my joy to honor you. Amazing love, amazing love. How can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Yeah, amazing love. I know it's true, and it's my joy to honor you in all I do. I honor you, and you are my King. You are my King. Oh, Jesus, you are my King. And I'm forgiven because you were forsaken, and I'm accepted. You were condemned, and I'm alive and well. Your spirit is within me because you died and rose again. Amazing love. Amazing love. How can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Yeah, amazing love. I know it's true, and it's my joy to honor you. Yeah, amazing love. How can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Yeah, amazing love. I know it's true, and it's my joy to honor you in all I do. I honor you in all I do. I honor you in all I do.